everybody, it's me again, Miss G from Rutter Middle School, and I am here to talk to you about this week's Musical Monday. Again, this is something that my students and I do almost every single week, and I am really excited about this one because it is one of my all-time favorite shows, and I'm pretty sure my students just figured out which one I'm talking about. That would be the one, the only Hamilton. I'm so excited. Okay, full disclosure, absolutely one of my all-time favorite musicals, and I've only seen it once, but I'm still really excited to talk to you about it today. Just like last week, we are going to talk kind of logistics. So, who wrote it, who choreographed it, that kind of thing. We'll go into a very brief summary of the plot. I'm actually going to give you a little bit more information this week about the group of gentlemen that created the production. Then we'll go into plot, and then we're going to kind of have a little bit of a reflection piece. So, let's get started on the one, the only Hamilton, an American musical. So, the book, music, and lyrics were written by one of my absolutely all time favorite people, Lin Manuel Miranda. It was directed by Mr. Thomas Cale, choreographed by Andy Blankenbuehler, and the music and orchestra directions were by Mr. Alex Lackamore. It was also produced by Jeffrey Seller and Jill Furman and the four gentlemen that I just previously mentioned. So this show ended up winning 11 Tonys. I believe it was nominated for a total of, I want to say 17, but it won 11 of them. It also won the 2016 Pulitzer Prize in Drama and a Grammy for the Best Musical Theater Album of the Year. So, really quickly, before we go straight into the plot, I wanted to give you a little bit more background about the four main um, people on the team, the production team, just so that you have a little bit better of an idea, because they're actually probably names that you're going to hear quite a bit. If you choose to study theater in high school or college, you're definitely going to hear a lot more about these guys. They are a force to be reckoned with individually. And so all four of them kind of combined together is just like mind blowing. They're actually all really good friends in real life and they do quite a few projects together. So let's get started. So, the one, the only Lin Manuel Miranda is a 40-year-old married father of two boys. And if you follow him on any of his social media, you know for a fact that he's actually very protective of his kids. He doesn't publish their pictures anywhere. And his wife is actually a scientist lawyer because she's like really smart. Um, Lin Manuel wrote the music and the songs for the Disney movie Moana. I'm also a big Disney nerd, huge fan of Moana, partially because Lin-Manuel was super involved in it. Um, he wrote the music for Hamilton over the course of about 8 or 9 years. He started writing it in 2007, and he did not finish it until about 2013. And even after that, it was kind of a work in progress, and it changed a little bit. But when it debuted off Broadway, he had been working on it for about 8 years. So kind of a big deal. Lin Manuel hosted Saturday Night Live in 2016. He was quite funny, in my opinion. And he also provided music and vocals for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And then he also starred in a little movie called Mary Poppins, the new one. I really liked it. I know a lot of people didn't, but I thought it was pretty good. He also provided major financial and moral assistance after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, which is where his family is from, in 2017. And so he was one of the major forces in helping that island get back on track, raising millions and millions and millions of dollars. So he's done all of these wonderful, amazing things. He has won award after award. He is going to go down as one of the most legendary playwrights in modern history, in my opinion. And all of this stuff that he's done, he started out as a high school English teacher. That was his first job out of college, was that he taught high school English in New York City. So I think that that's a really interesting fact because I think it shows that he purposely uses his words in a very particular manner. He obviously has a deep appreciation for the English language and for arts education. Um, Hamilton does a program called Ed for Ham, and that is where the company and cast of Hamilton perform and interact with high school students in New York, and they raise a bunch of money to allow these students to come see Hamilton for only $10 a ticket. These students who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to come watch a big Broadway production and spend hundreds of dollars on tickets, they let them come see it for $10. And they also provide a lot of educational resources. And the kids get to get up on stage and rap for the cast and the crew. And then they watch the production, and then they have what's called a talk back afterwards, which means that they get to talk and interact with the people that work on the production. And all of that is based in Lin-Manuel's desire to continue arts education, which is kind of obviously a big deal to me and your teachers. So Thomas Kail, he's an accomplished stage and TV director. He has won a ton of awards. And little fun fact about him is that he is engaged to Heath Ledger's ex-wife, and her name is Michelle Williams. So you guys probably know Heath Ledger. He was the Joker in Dark Knight, and so Thomas Kail is going to kind of be a part of that history, a smidge. So just fun little celebrity gossip fact, another hobby of mine. Andy Blankenbuehler went to college in Dallas, even though he grew up over on the East Coast, I believe in Virginia. But he actually went to college in Dallas, which I think is really interesting. He is a Tony Award winning and majorly accomplished choreographer. I believe, let's see, what would you guys know? Oh, he was in charge of the choreography for the 2016 revival of Cats, the musical. And he also did all of the choreography for the Cats movie, for which we forgive him. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie. Not my cup of tea. Not judging if you do, that's fine. But I heard the movie wasn't great. Alex Lacamoire. He began playing the piano at the age of 4, and he is also a Tony and Grammy Award winner. And I was doing a little bit more research on Mr. Lacamoire, and I found out something I didn't know, which I thought I would share with you guys. He actually is hearing impaired, and so he wears hearing aids most of the time, which I thought was really interesting, especially for somebody who's so reliant on his sense of hearing and everything. But it just kind of goes to prove that no matter what hand you're dealt, you can always make the best of it. I just thought that was fun. Okay, so now we're going to talk about kind of the actual production and plot of Hamilton. So, this specific story is actually told through the lens of diversity and all of the vast experiences that can be had in our country. Obviously, Hamilton was was one of the founding fathers of our country, and he had a very large part in the American Revolution. And so, all of those older, Anglo men were obviously not the way that you see them on stage. They're portrayed by actors of all kinds of different sizes and shapes and colors and religions and backgrounds. And that was done very purposely so that the audience members would be able to identify with what they were seeing on stage and see different aspects to the story that you might not otherwise identify if you were not aware of that casting choice. So the biographical musical was inspired by a book written by a man named Ron Chernow. And after Lin-Manuel Miranda won his very first Tony Award for his production of In the Heights, he took his wife on vacation. And in the airport, he was just in the bookshop browsing, and he was looking for, and I quote, the biggest, fattest book he could find. And so he just happened to pick up this book by Ron Chernow. I'm not kidding, y'all. It's like 800 pages. It's thick. It's massive. I bought a copy of it with the intention of reading it. I don't have time for that. The thing is huge. And he bought this thing to go on vacation with. Like, more power to you. But I mean, I've read like 3 books over break, but they were all like that big. So he got through, on vacation. And then it inspired one of the most successful musicals of all time. I digress. Anyway, so Hamilton is based on that book written by Ron Chernow, and it is the biographical story of one of our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton. So Hamilton was born on the island of Nevis in the West Indies, and his father left when he was a child, and then his mom died when he was 13. So he had a really rough upbringing, and it's not really somebody that you would necessarily identify as being one of the future founders of a major country. Um, but he was taken in by a local shop owner on his island, and the shop owner discovered that Alexander really had a gift for writing. He was a fantastic writer. And so he and a lot of people in the town got together some money to send Alexander to the United States to continue his education. And so once Alexander arrived in Boston, um, he met a man named Hercules Mulligan, who is also a very important part of our story. And he attended school for a little while, and then he decided he wanted to join the revolution. And so he kind of climbed up through military ranks and became one of our earliest American heroes. He ended up being our first Secretary of Treasury, and if you go look at a $10 bill, you'll notice that he is the face of the $10 bill. Most people think that to be on a portrait on money, you have to have been a president. That's not true. Alexander Hamilton was never president. He definitely wanted to be president, but through a couple of different events, that never really panned out for him. Alexander really thought with emotion rather than thinking things through a lot of the time. And so, due to his temper and some poor choices on his part, the presidency was never something that he was able to attain. However, he was still a very intricate part in the life of George Washington, who, as you all know, was our first president. And he was also an intricate life of our third president, Thomas Jefferson. Now, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton never got along. They hated one another from the very start. They were constantly fighting and out to get one another. And I'm not really going to go too much further into that because I think that you should experience that storyline in the musical for yourself. Um, but long story short, Alexander led a very interesting life. He experienced love, he experienced loss, he uh, he helped establish our country, and we owe quite a bit of what we do every day to Alexander Hamilton and his ideas. Um, At the end of the show, you will find that Alexander was shot and killed in a duel with a sitting vice president. His name was Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr actually serves as the narrator throughout our story. Alexander and Aaron Burr were old friends, but also kind of rivals. Alexander and Aaron Burr kind of went back and forth quite a bit and had very different ideas of what success looks like and honesty, and just kind of a moral high ground. And so they ended up having a pretty bad argument and agreeing to duel with one another. And Alexander was shot and killed. So the interesting thing about this duel, other than the fact that he was killed by a sitting vice president, which means the guy was still vice president while they were shooting one another. Super weird. So I don't. Okay, I'm gonna nerd out on you for a second. In Star Wars, I know, bear with me. In Star Wars, there is a disagreement about who shot first, Han Solo or this alien guy. Don't judge me. I know like this much about Star Wars. I know this much about Hamilton, but I'm trying. So who shot first, Han Solo or the alien? We have the same discussion with Hamilton and Burr. To this day, historians still are not completely sure who shot first, Hamilton or Burr. The most widely accepted belief is that Burr shot second, and that Alexander actually had no intention of going through with the duel. He was going to do what was considered the honorable thing in that type of situation and raise his pistol to the sky, and he ended up shooting a tree branch. And as he raised his pistol, Burr took more accurate aim and hit Alexander in the abdomen right above his right hip. And the bullet went up, fractured some of his ribs, which caused severe internal damage. And actually, the bullet ended up landing in his spine. So Alexander was paralyzed. He was rowed back to shore, taken to a friend's house where his family and friends were able to come and say their goodbyes. And Alexander died the next day on July 12th. Um, and Aaron Burr died a few years later, but he was vice president to Thomas Jefferson for a little while. Um, and that's like a very, very basic plot of the story of Hamilton, an American musical. So, a couple things I want you to think about. This is the second musical that I've discussed with you that is based in actual history. I asked you last week, why do you think these stories are important to tell? And a lot of you had some really, really good, deep, interesting thoughts. But now I want you to think about last week we talked about Come From Away, and that was a very recent story. It's just happened within the last 20 years or so. Um, and Hamilton happened in the 17 and 1800s. So why are we still talking about this? Why is the story of Alexander Hamilton important? What does it have to do what does it have to do with the way that we live our lives today? What could we learn from people like Alexander Hamilton and even Aaron Burr? I want to know what your thoughts are. Why do you think that Hamilton has become such a big deal in our kind of our pop culture society? You could take a couple of different angles from this. I want you to think about it as a historical piece first, which is why I asked you to think about why it's important that we still tell this story. I want you to think about why it's important in pop culture. Why is it a story that people really enjoy seeing? Why was it so hard to get tickets? Why is this musical that's based about some random guy that ended up on some money? Why is it important for us as not only Americans, because the show plays all over the world now, but why is it important for us to hear this story? What can we learn from it? But then I also want you to think about how it might change you. What are some things that you could take from Hamilton and apply to maybe your history classes and things like that? Could it give you a deeper appreciation for American history? Do you think it might help you out in school? And if that's the case, it is. It's totally the case. You should absolutely pay attention in history. It has an impact on absolutely everything. That's a whole nother discussion. I love history. I want you to think about when we're learning history through the lens and scope of theater, why is that possibly more educational than just learning about it from a book? What makes learning about history so much more entertaining? And do you think that it makes you remember the story better? Do you think that you are able to kind of identify with it better, and why? So please don't give me a summary of the plot. That's not what I'm looking for. I already gave you a summary of the plot. I want to know at least 5 sentences. I asked for 4 last week. I'm asking for 5 this week. I want to know at least 5 sentences of your original thought about why this story is important and the impact that it had on us as a society, and how it can kind of be applied to everyday life and maybe also other areas of school. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it. This is absolutely one of my most favorite musicals of all time. And I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.